All right. Thank you so much for listening into the Oh My God I'm Launching Podcast today. Today I have Nick Dimas with me, and this guy has done quite a few things in his life. So it's going to be interesting to just hear his little story about where he is and how he got there. But we're going to talk about story in messaging today. And I just want to say thank you, Nick, for coming on the show and welcome.
Well, Ken, OMG, I love that, by the way.
Yeah.
That's so good. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be with you, as always. I always enjoy our conversations, and now to share it with your community, your crew, is such an honor and a privilege. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That was really nice. Really nice. Before we get into the whole story and messaging, like I said, you have had an interesting life, and I would love for you to kind of share your journey from where things kind of started and where you're at today.
Yeah, so it's all kind of story related, actually.
Yeah,
If you
exactly.
if you talk to my mom, she says when I was 4 years old, I used to jump up on the table and recite the Grimm's fairy tales. And as a performer, you can imagine, I was
Uh-huh.
probably, dancing and singing and they knew immediately that I was going to be an actor, a performer. They
Mhm.
just sensed that I was going to be a storyteller of some kind, because for some time I would tell these stories. Fast forward I was 16 years old. I got my first professional job
Mhm.
as an actor. By 19, I went on the road with a show, a national tour of a musical in the States. Moved to New York and had a really successful career as a Broadway dancer and singer. And however, when you are a Broadway dancer and a singer, you are
Mhm.
told what to do. You're
Right.
told what the story is that you're telling. Well, the problem with that was that I was, as you can imagine, just from hearing me speak, very opinionated. And I used to look and say, well, that light isn't right. And why are they wearing that costume? And I
Oh,
would
you were at that
question,
level.
oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And I would question the director. They
Uh-huh.
didn't like me very much, right? I would start questioning things. And I was doing the Radio City Christmas Spectacular with the Rockettes. I was believe it or not, there are 12 men in that show. And I was one of the backup dancers with the Rockettes kicking their legs at Radio City. And there's this Nutcracker ballet and in the show where I have this bear costume on, right?
Mhm.
And I'm in a bear head, and the director has asked us to jump off of a trampoline onto the stage. And it's a big stage. Radio City is massive, and it's all grid. There's these numbers on the floor. And so I'm jumping from a trampoline onto a stage. I'm landing on this steel stage, and I'm looking for my number, and I can't find my number, and my bear head is falling over, and tears are rolling down my cheeks inside
Oh,
the bear
wow.
head. And it's Christmas, and
Uh-huh.
I'm supposed to be happy, and I have tears rolling down my cheeks. And I remember this moment really specifically, Ken, because I went back to the dressing room. I took the bear head off. I'm looking at myself in the mirror, in my dressing room mirror, and I said, this is not your life. This is not what you want to be doing. And I knew that I needed to be the one telling the story, not being told to stand on a number with a bear head on at Christmas. And so well, we closed the show at the end of the year. So the very next month, I got on the phone, old school style. I got on the
Mhm.
phone and started calling everyone I'd ever worked with, everyone ever worked for, and said, hey, I'm a director choreographer now.
You just made that shift
I
like
just did
that.
it. I just
Mhm.
said, I'm going to do this. And one of the people that I called said, oh my gosh, Nick, we just lost our choreographer
Hmm.
for this show. Will you come choreograph it? And I said, absolutely. And 1 month later, I had my first job. And within a year, I had fully transitioned to being a director choreographer full time.
That's awesome.
And I think that, what that really speaks to is that, in terms of like manifesting, in terms of like
Mhm.
creating in your business, it's like getting yourself out there,
Yeah.
right? Not being unafraid and unapologetic about what it is that you want and need. And that's really what I did in that moment. Fast forward now 3 more years later, I am directing across the country, directing across the world, actually. And One of the places that I directed was this theater in Oklahoma City and Oklahoma in the middle of the US. Yeehaw. And while I'm there, they fire the director of the theater, the producer.
Really?
Yeah, I'm directing a show there and they fire them. And the president of the board of directors turned to me and said, would you take over the theater for a year while we do a national search, while we do a search for the replacement? Now, I'm 28 years old. I don't know how to run a business. This is over $1 million a year business. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm a director, right? And I say, abso-friggin-lutely.
I knew it.
Because I knew in that moment that I would learn. Right? I knew that I didn't know anything, but I knew that I would, like, what an amazing experience to learn. And it was a huge learning year. And at the end of the year, the board president came back to me and said, we've had the most successful year we've had in 10 years. We don't want you to leave. Will you please stay? And I decided that I really wanted to continue to learn the business aspect. And so I stayed for an additional 8 years. So I was there 9 years total.
Additional 8 years. I mean,
Yeah.
That's...
Yeah. And we really grew the theater from about $1 million budget to over $4 million a year in revenue. We went from, I think when I started, there were like 5 people on staff to like 45. Like, it really grew the theater, did a capital campaign. I raised millions of dollars for a new theater, for an actual theater. So it grew tremendously at Children's Academy, et cetera. And I grew. But then I got bored. And more than bored, I was restless to go back to Broadway, to be honest.
Right.
And I had taken some time off, which I think is really, really important. That the power of taking some time. And I went to a yoga teacher training program in New York. I took a month off. And during that time, it really was like to replenish. At the time, I just felt burnt out because running a theater is a business, and it is a hectic business to run a theater. I was just tired, And I sat in meditation, and what came to me was, you don't need to take a month off. You need to quit your job. And I was like, no. I don't want to hear that. No. I have health benefits, which in the US is a big deal. I have health benefits. I have a salary in the theater. That's not normal. I can't quit. But I knew deep that I had to. Sort of deep within me, that voice said, no, you need the next adventure. And so now I'm 36, and it took me a year, honestly, to fully quit. Like, just because you hear it once doesn't mean you're going to do it. You have to like sit in and listen to that.
Yeah.
And then I finally did. I did it. I gave them a year notice, by the way, a year to find my replacement.
Wow.
And during that final year, I started a production company to produce on Broadway. And this is a really interesting story how that happened, actually, in that I took an old friend out to lunch. Somebody I hadn't seen. Really, we'd been in contact for years, but I hadn't really sat with her in years. And I said to her, I'm thinking of leaving my job and starting a production company. And this is somebody who had been a wardrobe person. Backstage, they help you change your clothes, And she turned to me, and she had married a very wealthy man. And she said, I'm kind of interested in doing that too. She said, I want to get back in the theater. I don't know. I don't want to be in wardrobe, but I'm interested. And I said, well, I'm actually looking for investors. And she said, well, how about $1 million?
Okay.
And so at the end of the day, she wrote me a check the very next day. Well, she transferred it to $1 million into my account that day. And that was the seed money to get that producing business started, which was really incredible when you think that it'd been a 20-some year relationship. But the reason that happened is that I had been really kind to her when other people weren't. And that's what she said to me. She said, you've always been kind.
And that's a lesson right there.
Isn't it? to be kind in business, to be in integrity, to be honest, to be real, to not be a schmuck, as we say, right?
Yeah.
And so I moved back to New York, and within 1 year, very fortunately, I produced a show that was a hit on Broadway, and we won the Tony a year later.
Amazing.
And that's when the real work started, Ken. Because then I was like, okay, I'm not even 40. I just had my dream come true. Now what the do I do?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt a little lost because when the Tony night happened, Tony's is like stars and red carpet, and it's fantastic, and it's exciting, and I'm sitting in the audience, and Bernadette Peters opened the envelope, and she read Memphis, and everyone around me stood up, and they were cheering, and there is this what they call a still, right? Like a moment that of camera that gets caught. There's this still picture of me I have of the moment when that happened. I got caught on camera, and my face is not joyous. It's not. It was like empty. And I remember the moment very clearly, because in the moment I said, this is it. This is it. This is how this is going to happen. This is what this is. This isn't what this is supposed to feel like. I'm not feeling this. And I'm walking up to the stage to accept an award, and that's how I was feeling. And that's when I knew that I had some work to do.
Yeah.
Because here
one
was
of the biggest moments. Yeah, the highlight. Yeah.
And the highlight.
Nothing.
And I'm feeling nothing. I'm feeling numb. And it was sort of out of body-ish, but also very numb. And that's when I dug in. And that's when I realized, I need to really think about how it is that I want to walk in this world. Who do I really want to serve? Yes, I do enjoy entertainment. Yes, I do love storytelling, but I needed to dig deeper. And that's when I went and spent some time with a teacher. Coaching. I really dove in, and then found that I wanted to be more of service on a sort of individual level, one-to-one with some clients, with other creatives, with business owners. And that really led me in this very long-winded stories to where I am today, of helping people really hone in on their stories so they can serve people, so they can manifest, so they can create income, so they can create impact in the world.
Right. I think just the entire story of you trying to figure out what you want to do, I think it's so funny, because we tell kids, to go to school, and you get to a certain level where you're old enough to kind of make your own decision. What do you want to do with your life, And here you are telling us that you've been through it all, like this and that, and you thought it was this, but it wasn't that, and now it's this. And I mean, how can we expect our kids, like at 18, okay, go figure out what you want to do with your life? It's like, yeah, sure, I'll take a degree in this and that, and probably never use it, because when you get in your 40s, that's when you finally start to realize, I don't want to do this. Same thing with me. I mean, it took me a lot of years to figure out what I want to do, but yeah, it's crazy how we think we're going to figure this out at such an early age.
Well, and we're conditioned to believe that we're supposed to know when we don't even know who we are.
Yeah.
How can you possibly know how you can best serve the world when you don't even know who you are on the inside? And I think, for me, part of this journey has been this self-discovery journey along with the path. Fortunately, I was that person who was like, I'm going to try this and see. And then it's no, maybe not. I'm going to try this and see. Versus that person who makes the decision that they don't feel that they can.
Yeah. And they get stuck in a job
and they
for
get stuck.
20, 30, 40 years. Yeah.
And, and part of that, to be truthful, is that I didn't have children. So I didn't have those responsibilities.
Right.
I was only responsible for myself. So of course I could say, I'm going to go try this, because I only had to take care of me in those moments.
Yeah.
So it's easy for me in many ways to say, yeah, do it. Go for it. but they're also realities, and I do understand that. So I know that you have taken huge leap of faith.
Yeah, but at
And
the same time, it's. I think my wife said it so perfectly. Is that while I was having a job, I was miserable before I got to work, and I was miserable at work, and I was miserable when I got home from work, and obviously that affected my family. So, is it better that I continue in this job? And yes, there's a certain level of security, blah blah blah, or do I just quit, follow my dreams, and let's see what happens? Make it happen in some kind of way, some kind of capacity.
yeah, that's powerful, though, that
It
you
is.
had that, innate ability, because that is that there that it's a skill. You had that skill. It's a skill to take risk,
Mm.
right? That's ultimately what we're talking about here, is taking risk. My
Yep.
dad said something to me once. He said, Nick, I've worked all of these years so that I could now in retirement live my life.
Mm.
He said, I did something I hated every day of my life so that I can now live fully. He
Mm.
said, you've lived to work. You love what you do. So
Yeah.
you're living your life already. That took me years and years to get to.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really, really, because I think for me at certain points, I thought, oh, I could have been more secure. I could have taken a more secure path. I could have, we all have
Could have.
that. I could have.
Mm-hmm.
I could have done that, but then I couldn't ultimately. Like,
Yeah.
that goes back to that moment of me like looking at the lighting and the costume and saying, well, no, I would have been fired anyway. Nobody would have had me. I had to be the boss, right? Like I had to forge my own path.
Yeah. So true. Well, okay, that was an interesting story, and that leads us to the story and messaging, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a good story. I mean, and the way you tell it as well. It's engaging and interesting. So good job.
Good work, you
Good
story
work.
expert, you. Good job at telling that story.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into story in the business and why it is so important. Because, like I just said, it's captivating to listen to somebody tell a good story.
Yeah.
So why is that so important in the business?
It's important in your business in many aspects, because one of the things that happened while you were listening to my stories, you either connected with it or you didn't.
Yeah.
Right. And therefore you either connected to me or you decided to move away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's vital in business, that people can connect to you. We used to say it's no like and trust factor, right? They have the no like and trust. Well, now it's got to go deeper than that, because you're like, ooh.
Yeah. We're gonna lean in now.
Yeah, because there's the sea is larger and bigger. Mm-hmm. So it's got to go beyond liking you. They nearly almost have to love you nowadays. So I always say it's now no love and trust. And that trust needs to be that they know that you can help them. It's got to go deeper than they just like you. You can like me a lot. You can even like that story I told. But if you don't trust that I can actually help you, it's not going to happen. And for anybody that's launching, that happens within seconds. Mm-hmm. The energy that you bring in is automatic. That's part of your story. Even how you show up in those first few sentences, you're already telling a story. You may not think of it as story, but that's telling a story. What you wear, what your backdrop is, that's a story.
Interesting.
And so are you drawing people in or are you repelling them? And it depends on who it is that you want. Who do you want to attract? Who do you want to draw in? And using not only those physical things that I was saying, the energetic thing of who you are, but then if you can hook them in with the story as their guide. Positioning is vital in storytelling for marketing. You are not the hero of the story.
No.
In marketing. In that last story I told, I was the hero. You were listening to my story in that journey, right? But I wasn't marketing to you.
No.
If I were going to take that story, which I do, and use it in marketing, I would probably have started it slightly differently.
Mm-hmm.
I would have talked about them first to position them as the hero of the story. I would have made it about them. Simple. Maybe I would have said, hey, have you ever felt like you got something you really, really wanted, and then when you got it, you felt like, wow, this wasn't what I hoped it would be? That's how my story began. I might have said something like that. I might have, you know what I'm saying? There's ways in which, and that might not have been it, depending on what I'm marketing, what I'm selling. But my point is, you make it about them, and then you show up as the guide. That's vital. Vital. So they look at you as somebody they can know, love, and trust that they can help. That you can help them.
Yeah.
You know what I meant.
Yeah. But I mean, it's about making that story relatable for them, even though it's your story.
Yeah. Even though it's your story, they've got to be able to see themselves in it. It's a bit like you said, you stopped me at one point in that when I was long-winded, because I am. And you stopped me at one point, and you said, oh yeah, I can relate to that. And then you told a bit of your story.
Exactly.
In reflection. Because your mind was already relating. And you can hook people like that into you hook them into your lair, you bring them into your world. Yeah, magically. No, what happens is they begin to take it on as their own. You'll also notice in the story that I shared, I use some descriptive words, some details, the tears rolling down my cheeks, right? That's a small detail, but it's one that gives a direct visual. The bear head, you got a direct visual in your brain, right? The Tony Awards, Bernadette Peters opening up the envelope. You got these little, now I didn't go into huge detail of, well, it was brown and, the outside and, I didn't go that far. So don't get mired down in details, but giving just these little subtle
visual cues.
It can be auditory, it can be visual, it can be scent, it can be, I could have said, oh, and the room smelled like da, 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 if that had been appropriate, right? Those little things that can draw people in, because again, the more they understand you and know who you are and trust you, the more likely they are to purchase from you.
Which is what we ultimately want.
But the story needs to position you. It can't just be a story. That's the other thing that I think people get confused about. They'll say, okay, well, I'm going to take this story that I have, but if it doesn't have anything to do with your business, who cares? Because this is where it's got to go beyond the like factor, the like and trust. I can like and trust you, Ken, but if I don't believe that you are actually going to help me, I'm not going to purchase from you. So the story needs to position you as the leader, the guide, the thought leader, ultimately, the expert in whatever it is that you offer, whatever it is that you sell. And in your launch, that's paramount. How can anybody purchase from you if they don't think that you're the person for them?
Exactly. Yeah. So how do we position us as that person, as that guide?
Choose the story wisely. Choose the story that relates to your product. And you might be like, well, I don't know how to do that. Like, what do you mean? Okay, let's say you're a meditation teacher. Let's say you teach meditation. That's what you offer. The other day, I was standing in line at Starbucks. And, by the way, I do teach a bit of meditation. That's why I can share this, right? I'm standing in line at Starbucks and, I really wanted that latte and I wanted it yesterday. And the barista was like talking up a storm with the person in front of me. And they were going on and on and on. And I was getting more and more impatient. Right to the place where I was like, like that feeling inside of you begins to well up.
Oh yeah.
And I took a very big deep breath because I teach breath work. I took a deep breath in that moment and I was like, oh, I need to practice what I preach.
Mhm.
I need to be the meditation teacher right now. I need to learn patience in order to teach patience. Well, see, now if I had been offering a meditation course, is that not showing my authority? Is that not saying and relatable at the exact same time?
Oh yeah. I wasn't even thinking about that you were actually telling story. I was just, you know,
You were leaning in.
yeah.
You were leaning in. And then if I had said, and you know how I learned patience? I learned patience through this modality X, this framework
Mhm.
Y, this practice Z. And guess what? I now teach that. And I had to go back and reuse all of those teachings that I already know. See, even then, you can slip up for a moment. But because I have these tools, I didn't yell at the woman. I didn't scream at the barista. I took a deep breath. I sat in a moment of meditation and realized that the importance of that. See what I'm saying? You can use that everyday story of standing in line to sell a product if it's the right aligned story.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, that was perfectly done. Yeah. I want to say standing ovations. But,
Standing ovation.
very beautiful
Bravo,
performance.
bravo, good performance. Well
Yeah.
done.
No,
But
but you make a good
we
point.
want a bravo. But what
Yeah.
we want more than that is somebody to click purchase.
Mm.
Because as you and I both know, the transformation is in the transaction. It is not in the bravo.
Yeah.
And that was a mistake for me, Ken, early on in my career here in the online space, because I was so used to applause.
Mhm.
Right?
Oh yeah.
When you
I can imagine.
when you are marketing for theater and storytelling, you're marketing to get applause. Yes, ticket buyers. Yes,
Mhm.
that is the transaction, the ticket buyer, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's about, aren't you fabulous? Applause,
But that's kind of
applause.
like what we see in social media today. I mean, you have people liking your post and comments, and you get all excited about that, but
Yeah.
nobody's buying.
Yeah. I mean, they call it vanity metrics, right? In some
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
But I don't really think of it as that. I think of it as influencer marketing.
Mhm.
Because here's where the rub with social media is that there are a lot of people out there actually teaching influencer marketing and not marketing on social, that's storytelling for businesses. Those are
Mm.
two very different things, and they're very conflated in the marketplace.
Interesting.
Because an influencer, what do they want? They want more likes,
Yeah.
they want more follows, because they get paid based
Mhm.
on that.
Yeah.
And so consequently, we've all bought into this idea collectively that we're supposed to keep up with that. We're supposed to keep up. We're supposed to have the popular post.
Mhm.
When the reality is, we've all heard the stories of the influencers who can't sell.
Yeah.
Right? They go to sell a T-shirt and they can't even sell a T-shirt with 2 million followers. We've
Mhm.
heard these stories. And ultimately, you have to really, and this is something I have to constantly do, being an entertainer, is keep myself in check. Is this a post that I'm putting out there that's just entertainment? Or is that actually going to draw in my ideal customer?
Mhm.
And being the entertainer, I have to, like I said, I have to really take a look at that. And not to say that you can't have some entertaining posts, because they also draw in new audiences. But you have to be careful to not go viral on
Oh
social
yeah.
with an
Yeah.
audience that's not yours. And then you've just screwed it all up, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, going viral is not necessarily a good thing at all. Like you said, you get all the wrong people uh, following you, liking your post, and that's going to screw up the algorithm. And yeah, you don't really want that.
And they're not your buyers. And,
Exactly.
and so they're looking for a different story, to be
Hmm.
honest. And that's the way I really look at it, is they're looking for a different story. They're looking for it to be entertained all the time. And so
Hmm.
then what happens is they come on your page, and you're now actually doing posts about, thought reversals and, things to shift their perception. And they're like, yuck, who is this guy? I don't want him.
Mm-hmm.
Click goodbye. Or they just, worse than that, is they just ignore your posts.
Yeah.
And then the algorithm says, nobody's interested in you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So yeah, don't get hung up on the reach or the views or the likes or the comments or whatever. You know, that's not what's important.
Not at all. And I know that that's for all of us. That's like, it's tricky,
Yeah,
right?
it's like,
It's
well, what would I do then? If
yeah.
I'm not getting that.
If I'm not getting that, why am I doing this? Some days you
Uh-huh.
think, why am I telling these stories? Why am I putting all this effort in? But it's the long game, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
remind yourself of that. Just yesterday, I had somebody come to me and say, I have been following you for 7 years.
What? That's a long time.
7 years before they decided they were ready to coach with me.
Oh my God.
And that was even before I was a coach. They've been following me.
Yeah.
So
So they've been following your journey all the way.
they've been following my entire journey, and just now
Amazing.
feel ready to coach with me. I mean, I was blown away. And where did they come from? Instagram.
Oh,
You just never know.
no. Clearly not.
People are watching, and you don't know they're watching. People
Yeah.
are paying attention to you, and you have no idea.
Yeah. So the moral of that story is don't give up.
Don't give up. Don't give up. And I know, you have sometimes you'll have a launch that doesn't go so well, or sometimes you know all that stuff happens. That's the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. But that tenacity, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you from a storytelling perspective, I have seen people in the entertainment industry who are far less talented than some others go way further because of just showing up, just
Mm-hmm.
saying, I'm going to do this no matter what it takes.
Yeah, and we see that in the online space too.
Of course.
Same thing.
Same thing.
And it breaks obviously some hearts of the people who really genuinely have something to say and can really help people, but they're not getting that traction, not seeing that results, and then they give up.
So stick with it for anybody out
Mm-hmm.
there, who's listening that is questioning themselves, who's saying, oh, should I continue? Should I do it?
And
Stick with it.
you're gonna
You,
multiple times.
oh my gosh, Ken, I can't tell you the number of times I've been like, I need to give this up and go back to the theater. Theater's easier.
Uh-huh.
Where 2% of the population actually work.
I've had these thoughts today, actually. I'm not gonna lie. I've had these thoughts today. It's like, why am I doing this? Oh. But yeah.
But then there's that person that comes to you after 7 years and says, I need your help. And I know we had a lovely conversation, and I was like, oh yeah, I know I can help you.
Mm-hmm.
I know I can break through these blocks that you have about sharing who you are. And that's ultimately what I do with storytelling is I really help people, remove the blocks so that they can manifest with their story, so that they can create abundance with their story.
Because that's definitely a thing too, that, you feel like, well, I don't have any stories to tell or share, or I don't want to do it because I'm afraid of this, that, judgment, blah, blah, blah.
I'm afraid it's my story is not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Who am I to tell this story? What's too much? Some people have a huge story and they don't know what parts of it to tell.
Mm-hmm.
There's all different versions of the same thing, but at the end of the day, it all boils back down to, I'm scared to be vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
because it's vulnerable to put yourself out there
Oh,
ultimately. But the irony is, the more vulnerable you are, the more real you are, the more that you express who you are, the more people are drawn to you.
but then again, there's like two different vulnerability, I would say.
Oh, yes.
You have the one that you kind of just complaining to the world, which doesn't really help you. But at the same time, you have the other one where you kind of show that you actually got through this. You
Yeah.
managed to rise to the occasion, and yeah.
That's the true story versus the real story.
Mm-hmm.
So the real story is that I went through this horrific thing and oh my gosh, it's terrible and my life is awful but it's okay. I'm going to be okay. But you want to hear and you just keep vomiting your stuff. But the true story is one that you really dive into what happened to you, but where you are at now on the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the other side of it is, here's the lesson that I'm going to share with you so that you, and again, this is positioning, so that you don't have to make the mistakes that I made. Or if you are making those mistakes, you know that there's somebody who's gone through it before you, so that you can be the shining light, so you can turn the light back, shine back for people so that they can walk towards it, so that they see what's possible for them. That's a very different telling of your story than sitting in the drama. Nobody wants your drama, right? We see it all the time, and you're like, oh, they're at it. Those people you follow, and they're like, oh, they're at it again. Okay, here they are. We don't want or need that. Nor are you positioning yourself well at all. That doesn't mean that you don't share things that, like you just did, very authentically. You shared that, yeah, today I'm feeling like this. That's okay. That's not what I'm talking about.
No.
There's a difference between sharing that in a real way and then just going on and
Yeah, I could say her entire interview and just, oh, today was such a suck day, and I couldn't get anything done. It's like, blah, 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 blah. But
yeah,
that's not.
So now, am I going to want to purchase from you if you do that? No,
no, of course not.
Of course not. But if you say, you know what, I had a hard day today, that's real.
Yeah,
that's real.
But at the same time, yeah, I got out of it. I snapped out of it.
Exactly.
I managed to, get out of the funk. Because I've been working on this for a couple of years now to, manage this.
Yeah. And help others now manage it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Nothing will bring up your ish more than being in a launch. Good gravy. I mean, it's like get everything in the kitchen sink gets thrown at you during your launch. It all comes up. Every story you've ever heard about yourself comes to the surface during your launch. From both inside and outside, because of course you're going to get that reflection back. Every troll that there ever was comes out during a launch. You're like, okay, here we go, and all of your stuff. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm like all of that comes up. That's the whole story. What story are you telling yourself internally as well as externally? That's the other thing, really.
Yeah.
What is the internal story as well as this external story you're telling?
Yeah, because they're both real when you're doing this business thing.
Yeah. Especially a personal brand. Yeah. For all of you that are personal brands out there, that this is the ride that you got on. So buckle up, put your safety belts on, because you're going to go on the roller coaster. And it's really about learning to manage that. And manage those stories, the internal ones you're telling yourself.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, it's not easy to always do that yourself. It's good to have someone to talk to, someone who understands what you're going through.
Look, that's why every coach needs a coach.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter your level. You need that.
I mean, new level, new devil.
That's exactly. You need that exterior. That I like to think of it as a camera lens, right? We have the camera lens. Here I am, storytelling talk again for you. We have the camera lens super tight on us. We can only see the close-up. And what a coach really does is that they back up the camera lens, and suddenly you're at a wide shot. And they're actually the lens. The coach is that lens. They're the camera, because they can see something that you can't see. They back it way up and they see the full picture, and they help you then be able to see that bigger picture in a way that you're so in it, you're so tight, you're in such a close-up that you can't see. And again, that doesn't matter. I need a coach. You need a coach. We, in fact, share the same coach, at least one of them. That
and he got a coach. I mean,
yeah, and he's got a coach, and so on. Because, and you need different coaches for different things as well. I firmly believe that. At different stages, at different points, what you're dealing with, what's coming up. again, those stories, those internal stories, whatever
Yep.
they are.
Yeah, you're not meant to have like one coach throughout your life. Absolutely not.
No, because you're evolving, you're changing, you're growing, you're shifting in each and every moment.
So, what has been one of your worst moments in launching since we were on that topic?
Oh gosh, really?
Well, yeah.
Oh, where do I begin? I've had so many moments, like, oh, let's see. Okay, the time when my internet went out in the middle of a live launch.
Interesting. Yeah.
That was fun. And me hopping very quickly onto my phone to try to, keep it going, basically.
Hmm.
Then having to send an email because the phone wasn't. I mean, it was just a absolute cluster. And me sending an email being like, "Hey, we're gonna do this again. Come again." You know. And of course, about a third of the people did not.
Yeah.
They did not. They did not come back. And that was like
Hmm.
you I've had times when the Facebook ads don't convert. Didn't convert. Just did not convert. And, the expectation of the number of people that I thought I was going to have in my launch was about a quarter of what it actually was.
Hmm.
And if you do the math, therefore, so is the conversion, right? Um, there have been several moments that you go, oh, I've sent the wrong link at timer 12.
Sure.
Um, you know, I at one point I was launching it every quarter,
Hmm.
and I got much better at it. I will say this to
But
anybody
that's
out
good.
there who's launching, like if you're doing your first launch, your second launch is going to be better than your first launch. You know, your third launch might not be as good as your second launch or your first launch because then you start getting in your head. At least I did.
Hmm.
Start getting in my head about it. And I had to come to this point of being like, you know what? I can't care as much. And I know that sounds weird, but what I mean
Yeah.
by that is I couldn't have attachment, not only
Hmm.
to the outcome, because we're always talking about no attachment to outcome. I had to have non-attachment to whatever was happening because I had that idea of wanting it to be perfect. I did
Hmm.
all the things. If there was something you could possibly do, I did it all. Every, workbook, every giveaway, I like you name it, I was doing it all. And I got to this place where then I had this attachment to what it was supposed to be.
Mm.
And I finally realized that I needed to simplify, that it didn't need to be that complicated, that I actually was overcomplicating it, that I was looking at the quote unquote biggies in the space and
Hmm.
trying to replicate what they did.
Yeah.
Now, I was trying to replicate it in my own way, but what I wasn't looking at was that they have teams of 12 to 20 people. And here it was me and my integrator and a VA,
Hmm.
right? How am I possibly going to replicate something that has a team of 12 to 20 people? But I
Hmm.
was killing myself trying to do it. Well, guess what energy I was bringing into my launch?
Plus,
I
they've been
was
doing it for how many
ever.
years?
They've been doing it, for 10 years longer than I have, at
Hmm.
least, right? And so I was bringing this like frantic energy into the launch because I was like trying to make everything happen,
Hmm.
all the balls in the air. And of course, then a ball or two is going to drop when you're doing that many pieces of a
Hmm.
puzzle. And so when I began to realize, okay, I love lunch strategy. It's really vital. It's really important. I'm learning from the quote unquote biggies. But at the end of the day, I have to make it my own. And I have to do it in a way that feels in alignment with me and with my audience. What do they want? Do they really want a giveaway? Do they really want a third workbook? Maybe they just need one workbook. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like it was that kind of thing. That that is when launching shifted for me.
Hmm. And obviously, it's easier said than done to both stay detached from the result and, like you said, the whole launch itself. And
Yeah.
but I mean, if you understand that and you can actually start working on it and getting aware of, you know, all where all these thoughts go, and I mean, it's gonna do a lot for you. when you go into launch.
Tools are helpful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I mentioned before, you know, breath work, meditation, writing, these are tools like to help manage your energy.
Mm-hmm.
Even just stepping away, taking a walk, you know, those are really important when you're in that launch space so that your head can stay in the right place.
Yeah.
So you don't go on that free fall, that roller coaster free fall, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And
All
that's
right.
not to say that won't ever happen again, because I had a
No,
launch recently
obviously.
where I went into free fall, and I thankfully here's you know, another thing: surround yourself by great people like yourself, like
Mm,
others in the space that you really like because and appreciate and are helpful and will hold you to the fire. Because I was in a mastermind and they were like, "You're in free fall, Nick,"
mm-hmm.
and I was like, "Oh, you are absolutely right. That is what's going on." And then I was able to come out of it. I didn't even realize I was in it.
That's scary. That's a little scary. All right. I want to wrap things up, but I think we had a wonderful conversation about both your story, the the importance of a story in your business, and we even touched a little bit on the launch stuff as well. So I love it. Um, how can people reach out to you, get in touch with you, work with you, all that?
Yeah. So I'm at the Nick Demas, THE, like the Nick Demas, DEMOS, on Instagram, on TikTok, Facebook, basically across all those platforms. And on my website is thenickdemas.com as well. And yeah, you can
All right.
come work with me, come hang, come play, come dance. We dance. Come dance.
If you want to dance, Nick is the guy.
I'm not going to teach you how,
No,
but
no, we're just gonna have
we're
fun
just going to
and
have
dance.
fun.
Yeah. So schedule a call with Nick if you want to dance and have fun. All right, that's a call to action. Beautiful. No, I really appreciate this conversation. It's been great. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you for having me, Ken. Thank you so much.
Thank you.